Welcome to episode 18 of the Minifecta podcast, where we talk about sports and games, and I am your host, Matt Witt, and today we have a very special episode. We talk about the possibilities of what the Minnesota Vikings will do with Anthony Harris. You don't want to miss it. So as of a couple days ago, Rick Spielman chose to use his franchise tag on Anthony Harris, the strong safety that went undrafted and then it was picked up by the Minnesota Vikings, and obviously an amazing pickup. I mean, three of these players that they had to deal with, so Eric Wilson, Anthony Harris, CJ Ham, new contracts to all of them. Well, they placed a tender on Eric Wilson, and these are all went undrafted, and we do really good with these undrafted free agents. So what this contract is, it's a 4-year contract worth $11.4 million, now getting paid more than Harrison Smith, which is he's not okay. Anthony Harris is not better than Harrison Smith. I'll say that right now. Anthony Harris is great. He is a totally starter. He's an amazing safety. And this last season, I think he deserved the Pro Bowl over Anthony Harris. Over Harrison Smith. I think Anthony Harris deserved it over him because of how great he did this last season. Now, when you look at actual value, Anthony Harris, I do not think is better than Harrison Smith when it's like overall value. But as of this last season, I think Anthony Harris deserved the Pro Bowl more. But Pro Bowl is obviously always popular vote, and since people who aren't Minnesota Vikings fans usually don't even know who this guy is, then it goes to Harrison Smith. So Anthony Harris, this is his stats that don't count postseasons, because that's what stats are. They don't count postseason. But so I always say 7 interceptions. Well, technically on the books he has 6 interceptions, but he got one in the postseason that I wanted to count that just so he could have the most interceptions in the entire league. So 60 tackles, 6 interceptions, a safety, and a TD. That TD was kind of given to him, but it was his first touchdown ever. And same with his first safety, and that touchdown was kind of given to him by Russell Wilson when he threw the ball out, poked it back up in his hands, and then he was a pick 6. So that his first touchdown, congratulations. And then he had 2 games. He had 2 interceptions, I think, against the Packers, 2 interceptions against the Falcons. So he had a lot of interceptions. That's all I'm going to say. And he picked off all these great quarterbacks. So Anthony Harris got way better hands than Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith, I see him drop too many passes. But when it comes to tackling, when it comes to really just smartness of knowing where to go and all that, Harrison Smith is definitely better. And Anthony Harris, so why did they give him this contract? Why are they paying Anthony Harris? Why did they give a franchise tag to Anthony Harris and now paying him more than Harrison Smith? Because it can go 2 ways. This can go 2 ways. Either it's a tag and trade. I think Rick Spielman, when he did this, his plans were to tag and trade Anthony Harris. I think his plans were to give Anthony Harris his franchise tag so he would not walk into free agency. Now, he did not want this to happen, Rick Spielman, because you can't have a player. You don't want a player like this to walk into free agency when you have the money to pay for him of this caliber, when you have even though you're going to be good at the safety position. I mean, Jaron Kearse is not coming back, but then you have Harrison Smith, and then you can draft a new safety in the 2nd, 3rd round. So why he did this, he wanted to tag and trade. Now, this was his number one plan. If it wasn't that, then you keep Anthony Harris, and who's complaining, really? So now they have the cap space because obviously the Diggs trade, we talked about that in yesterday's episode. Those were 3 of our top 4 contracts that aren't getting paid anymore. So now you definitely can pay 2 safeties this money. It's just not what you want to do. You don't want to pay 2 safeties this kind of money. And really, it's going to be okay. I mean, the team loves Anthony Harris. Fans love him, and he loves being here. So if we do keep Anthony Harris out this entire contract, it's going to be fine. No one's complaining. He's a great safety. And it just doesn't feel right to pay 2 safeties this kind of money. So what does this mean for the Vikings? The Vikings can trade Anthony Harris. I think this is Rick Spielman's number one choice. I think he wants to tag and trade Anthony Harris. He just did not want to let Anthony Harris walk into free agency and get picked up by a team, so he wants to tag and trade him. I think this is a great decision. I think most teams wish they could do this. I think that's what the Bengals are doing with A.J. Green. I don't think they're going to keep A.J. Green for whatever reason. I think they're going to tag and trade him. He's just too old for this rebuilding phase. Well, he's not old, but he's just you don't want to have a veteran wide receiver and a rookie quarterback. I don't know, but we're not talking about the Bengals. I think they're going to tag and trade AJ Green though. So this tag and trade for Anthony Harris. Who will take Anthony Harris? I think a lot of teams need safeties of this caliber and don't want to use the draft capital on it. So you look at the Cleveland Browns. They don't want to use a 2nd, 3rd round pick on a safety when they don't need to. See, if you trade Anthony Harris to them, they'll probably give him a ton of late picks. So if you trade Anthony Harris to a team, you'll probably get a 4th round pick, a couple 6th-round picks, like a ton of like mid to late round picks, maybe a 3rd-round pick, a ton of like mid to late round picks, or even another player. I think it would be great to trade for another player. So you look like the Cleveland Browns really could trade for Anthony Harris. I think it's very possible. And what they would give up would be probably, if it was the Browns, they'd probably give up a player and then a couple other picks. Or if it's a really good player, say they're giving up, I don't know, Odell. I don't know why they would want to give up Odell, but I think he might want to leave. So they trade that. I mean, that could be possible. And then, but we would have to give up a ton of picks. I don't think that's going to happen. It just doesn't seem right. But if it were to happen, and then you have the Browns. That's the number one. I think because of how high they pick in the draft, I think that they really should trade for Anthony Harris. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys. They're ready to win now, and their secondary sucks. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys will probably take a safety in the 1st round, but if they trade for Anthony Harris, they don't need to, and they can take a corner in the 1st round and then improve their secondary that much more. And then you can have a corner because they're in a good spot to grab like Christian Fulton, CJ Henderson. They're in a good spot to grab a new corner. And then you have Anthony Harris, so their secondary is already looking great. And the Dallas are a ready to win now team. They just gave Amari Cooper and Dak their new contracts, and then you have Ezekiel Elliott. Their offense is amazing. I'm surprised they let Randall Cobb go, but maybe they weren't able to pay for him. That was kind of a surprise, but Randall Cobb and Jason Witten are gone. Who really cares about Jason Witten? But Randall Cobb was kind of a surprise because he played amazing with them this last season. So what they're going to do, I think the Cowboys really could trade for him. The Eagles could trade for him. Eagles have an awful secondary also. There's a lot of teams that would need a safety and don't want to give up the draft capital. Like they don't want to grab a safety in the 1st round just because there's other positions that are better that you should go for in the 1st round. That Anthony Harris really is 1st-round talent. And then, so it can go two ways. Either it's a tag and trade, which I want to happen. I think that's the most possible. Or that's what Rick Spielman wants to happen too. Just knowing Rick Spielman, he wants to get all these like late round picks and didn't want to let Anthony Harris walk into free agency. Now we do have the space to pay him now because Diggs, our $40 million decoy, isn't here anymore. So we do have the space to pay him, and that really helps with our cap space. But as we're going to bring in more players, I think the Vikings will take a wide receiver in free agency. Probably not a wide receiver 2. They probably will draft one and then take a new 3 receiver. I don't know who that's going to be, but there will probably be someone. So that's what I think would happen. I'm sure there's so many teams that are looking at Anthony Harris and would want him. I mean, even the Vikings would love to keep Anthony Harris because of how great and how impactful he was for this team this last season. He did more than Harrison Smith, even though I do believe Harrison Smith is better. So in conclusion, the Minnesota Vikings won this deal. I mean, they won no matter what. Now, this was Rick Spielman being smart. I mean, whatever way it goes, you're going to win. You're either going to keep Anthony Harris. No one's complaining. You're going to get rid of Anthony Harris. Well, there's going to probably be some people complaining, but then those people will look at what you get out of it and be like, oh, okay, at least we didn't let him walk into free agency. So it's very useful. Plus, you'll free up more space so you can bring in more players. Probably a receiver 3. I'm waiting for that. Dan Bailey's going to come back. I don't know why they haven't had that deal done yet. Everson Griffin will probably be coming back. So you can free up a lot of space, and paying him more than Harrison Smith just does not make sense to me. Paying 2 safeties this much money just does not make sense to me. So let me know what y'all think. Are we going to keep Anthony Harris? I wanted Anthony Harris to be a tag and trade just because we could get another safety in like the 2nd, 3rd round, and we can get more players out of it. However, I really can understand if people want Anthony Harris to still play here because it makes a lot of sense because he's amazing, but it just doesn't make sense to pay 2 safeties that much, even though we did see it very useful this last season. You can get another safety in the 2nd round or 3rd round. So let me know what y'all think about this tag and trade. If there is going to be a tag and trade, I think it's very possible, or if they're going to keep it. And as always,